The rain hammered against the train windows as Elara stumbled into the wrong carriage, soaking wet and trembling. Before she could retreat, the door slammed shut, locked from the inside. She turned to face him, Kyle Draven, the Alpha King himself, eyes like winter steel cutting through her. Everyone said he was untouchable, cruel, a monster who destroyed anyone who crossed him. She was nobody, a forgotten wolf from a dead pack, heading to a gathering where she'd be invisible among thousands. But here, trapped in his private cabin for 3 days, invisible was the one thing she couldn't be. And something told her this mistake would either kill her or change everything. Will Elara survive 3 days locked away with the most dangerous alpha alive? Stay until the end to find out. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling us what city you're watching from. The Greyhound station in Thornmere reeked of wet fur and desperation. Elara Vance pressed herself against the chipped tile wall, her threadbare coat doing nothing against the cold that seeped through the platform. Around her, wolves from a dozen different packs jostled and shoved, their voices sharp with excitement. The grand gathering, 300 packs, thousands of unmated wolves all heading to the capital for a week of territorial posturing disguised as tradition. She didn't want to be here. Her fingers clutched the crumpled ticket, third-class passage purchased with the last of her savings from working doubles at the diner. Around her, wolves in expensive clothes laughed too loud, their confidence like armor. She recognized the type. Pack wolves. Wolves who belonged somewhere. Elara belonged nowhere. Move it, rogue! A shoulder slammed into hers, sending her stumbling. She caught herself against a pillar, her wolf snarling inside her chest, but she swallowed it down. Fighting back only made things worse. She'd learned that the hard way when her pack dissolved 3 years ago, scattering like ash in the wind. The loudspeaker crackled overhead. Royal Express departing Platform 9. All passengers with proper credentials proceed immediately. Elara glanced at her ticket. Platform 12. Common passage. She started threading through the crowd, her small frame making it easier to slip between bodies. Rain pounded the glass roof above, turning everything into shadows and gray light. That's when she saw it, a gap in the crowd near Platform 9, a clear path to the train. Her platform was still mobbed, people shoving and cursing. 3 minutes until departure. If she missed this train, there wouldn't be another for 6 hours, and her ticket was non-refundable. She made a split-second decision. Ducking low, she darted toward Platform 9, joining the tail end of wolves boarding the Royal Express. Nobody stopped her. Why would they? In her worn clothes and with her head down, she looked like a servant, maybe. Someone's forgotten luggage handler. The train stretched ahead like a steel serpent, its cars gleaming black and gold. She climbed the steps into the nearest carriage, her heart hammering. She'd slipped through to third class. Nobody would notice. Nobody ever noticed her. The interior hit her like a physical force. Polished wood. Brass fixtures. Carpet so thick her boots sank into it. This wasn't just first class. This was something else entirely. The air itself felt different, heavy with power, with dominance that made her wolf whimper and try to curl into submission. Wrong car, she whispered to herself, already turning back. The door slammed shut. She spun around, grabbing the handle. Locked. Her pulse spiked. She yanked harder, but the mechanism didn't budge. Through the small window, she could see the platform pulling away, rain streaking the glass. Looking for something? The voice came from behind her, low and cold as winter stone. Elara's blood turned to ice. She turned slowly, her back pressed against the locked door. He sat in a leather chair near the window, one leg crossed over the other, utterly still. Kyle Draven. She'd only ever seen him in photographs, and those hadn't prepared her for the reality. He was bigger than she'd imagined, his shoulders broad enough to block out the lamp behind him. Dark hair, longer on top, pushed back from a face that could have been carved from granite. Sharp jaw, blade-straight nose, and eyes, cold gray eyes that pinned her like a butterfly to a board. He wore all black. Simple clothes, but the kind of simple that cost more than she'd make in a year. Everything about him screamed control, from the precise way he held his whiskey glass to the absolute stillness of his posture. Every instinct in her body screamed to submit, to drop her eyes, to make herself smaller. She forced herself to meet his gaze. "I boarded the wrong car," she said, and was surprised her voice didn't shake. The door locked. "I'll move as soon as you unlock it." Hale didn't move. didn't blink, just studied her with the kind of focus that made her feel dissected. "Third-class passenger," he said. Not a question. His gaze flicked over her cheap coat, her scuffed boots, the water still dripping from her hair. "Lost?" "I know where I'm supposed to be." She lifted her chin. "Just let me out and I'll get there." "No." The single word hit like a slap. Elara's wolf rose up, confused and frightened. "What do you mean, no?" Kyle took a slow sip of his whiskey, his eyes never leaving hers. "We're moving. The train doesn't stop for 3 days. You're here now." He gestured vaguely toward the opposite end of the car. "There's a sleeping compartment through that door. You'll stay there." "I can't stay here." She heard the edge of panic in her voice and hated it. "This is the royal car. I'm not supposed to—" "I'm aware of where you're not supposed to be." He set down his glass with a soft click. "And yet here you are. So throw me out." The words came out sharper than she intended. "Call your guards. Have me arrested. Whatever protocol says you're supposed to do." Something shifted in his expression. Not quite amusement, but close. "Is that what you want?" "I want to go where I belong." "Where's that?" The question caught her off guard. She opened her mouth, closed it. Where did she belong? Third class with the other nobody wolves heading to a gathering they'd be ignored at? Back in Thornmere, working tables and sleeping in a room barely bigger than a closet? Kyle leaned forward slightly. "You boarded my private car. That makes you my problem for the next 3 days. You'll stay in the sleeping compartment. You won't touch anything. You won't speak unless I address you. And when we reach the capital, you'll leave and forget this happened." "Just like that?" "Just like that." Elara's hands curled into fists. She should be grateful. He was offering her mercy, in his own cold way. But something about his tone, his absolute certainty that she'd obey, made her wolf snarl. "What if I refuse?" His eyebrows rose fractionally. "Refuse? What if I make noise? Call for help? Tell everyone the Alpha King kidnapped me?" The silence that followed made the air feel thin. Kale stood. Not quickly. Nothing about him was ever quick or careless. But the movement drew her attention to just how much bigger he was, how much space he took up. He crossed the distance between them in 3 strides and stopped close enough that she had to tilt her head back to hold his gaze. "You could do that," he said softly, "and I'd have you declared rogue and unstable. You'd be detained for psychiatric evaluation. By the time anyone sorted out the truth, the gathering would be over and your name would be flagged in every pack database in the country." He paused. "Is that what you want?" Her heart slammed against her ribs. "You'd ruin my life over 3 days?" "I'd protect my territory over 3 seconds. His voice didn't rise, but the weight behind it doubled. "You think anyone would believe you over me? You think anyone would care about a packless wolf who can't even read a ticket stub?" The cruelty of it stole her breath. She'd heard the stories about Kyle Draven, the Alpha King who unified the northern territories through force and fear, who executed traitors without trial, who hadn't taken a mate in 10 years because no wolf was strong enough to stand beside him. Looking at him now, she believed every word. But she didn't drop her eyes. "I read my ticket just fine," she said quietly. "I made a choice to board early because the platform was mobbed, and I was going to miss the train. Maybe not the smartest choice, but I owned it, just like I'm owning this conversation instead of crying and begging." She took a breath. "So fine. You want me to stay quiet and hide for 3 days? I'll do it. But not because you threaten me, because it's the practical choice." Kale stared at her, really stared like he was seeing her for the first time. Then he stepped back. "What's your name?" The question threw her. "Elara. Elara Vance." "What pack?" "None. Not anymore." His jaw tightened. "You're rogue." "I'm packless. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Rogues choose to leave. I didn't choose anything." The old bitterness crept into her voice. "My alpha died. The pack dissolved. Some of us scattered. That's not the same as going rogue." Kale studied her for another long moment, then turned and walked back to his chair. "The compartment is through there. There's food in the cabinet, water in the bathroom. Stay out of my way." Elara wanted to argue, wanted to demand he explain why he was keeping her here instead of just letting her move to another car at the next junction point. But exhaustion crashed over her. exhaustion and the bone-deep knowledge that arguing with an alpha king in his own territory was suicide. She picked up her bag and moved toward the compartment door. Elara. She froze, glancing back. Kael had picked up his whiskey again, but his eyes were on her. Don't try the windows. We're moving too fast. You'd die. I'm not suicidal. Good. He took a sip. That makes things simpler. She didn't know what to say to that, so she slipped through the door and closed it behind her. Hotel. The sleeping compartment was bigger than her entire apartment. A wide bed took up most of the space, covered in dark sheets that probably cost more than her yearly rent. There was a small bathroom with actual marble counters, a closet, a desk. Everything gleamed. Elara dropped her bag and sank onto the edge of the bed, her hands shaking now that she was alone. 3 days. She was trapped for 3 days with the most dangerous alpha in the territory. Her wolf paced anxiously inside her chest, confused by the conflicting signals. Danger. Power. Something else she couldn't name. She pulled off her wet coat and boots, then checked the cabinet Kael had mentioned, stocked with expensive preserved foods, things she'd only ever seen in store windows. Her stomach growled. She hadn't eaten since yesterday. Pride warred with hunger. Hunger won. She ate a small portion of dried meat and fruit, washing it down with water that tasted cleaner than anything from Thornmere's pipes. Then she sat on the bed and tried to think. Why hadn't he thrown her out? It didn't make sense. An alpha king didn't need to tolerate a nobody wolf in his private space. He had guards, protocols, systems designed exactly for situations like this. One word, and she'd be gone. But instead he'd locked her in. Stay out of my way. Fine. She could do that. 3 days of silence. Then the gathering, where she'd be invisible again anyway. She could survive 3 days. She lasted 4 hours before the silence drove her crazy. The train rocked gently, the landscape outside blurring past in shades of gray and green. Rain still streaked the windows. She'd tried to sleep, but her mind kept spinning. Tried to read the battered paperback in her bag, but couldn't focus. Finally, she got up and cracked open the compartment door. Kael sat in the same chair, now with a book in his hands. He didn't look up. I need to ask you something, Elara said. No. You don't know what I'm going to ask. Doesn't matter. The answer is no. She stepped fully into the main car. Why are you keeping me here? That got his attention. He lowered the book, some dense political treatise, and regarded her with that same unsettling focus. I told you, you're my problem until we reach the capital. That's not an answer. It's the only one you're getting. Elara crossed her arms. Let me rephrase. Why didn't you call your guards? Or have the conductor move me? Or any of the dozen other things you could have done that don't involve babysitting a packless wolf for 3 days? Kael closed his book. You ask a lot of questions. I'm trapped in a moving train with a stranger who has the power to destroy my life. I think I'm entitled to a few questions. You think you're entitled. He said it like the concept amused him. Interesting. Why is that interesting? He stood, and again she was reminded of just how much bigger he was. But this time, instead of moving toward her, he walked to the window, hands clasped behind his back. Most wolves who end up in front of me spend the entire time trying to appease me, he said. Bowing, scraping, telling me what they think I want to hear. He glanced at her. You haven't done any of that. Would it work if I did? No. Then why bother? A ghost of something crossed his face, not quite a smile, but close. Why indeed? The train rattled over a junction, and Elara grabbed the back of a chair for balance. Kael didn't move, perfectly steady despite the motion. You still haven't answered my question, she said. I don't owe you answers. No, but keeping me here without explanation feels cruel for cruelty's sake. And somehow, I don't think you're that type. His eyes sharpened. You don't know anything about what type I am. I know your reputation. Everyone does. The ruthless Alpha King who unified the territories through blood and fear. She paused. But if that's all you were, I'd already be dead or locked in an actual cell, not standing here arguing with you. Kael turned fully to face her, his expression unreadable. You think you're special? I think I'm confusing. To you. She said it before she could stop herself, before fear could choke the words back down. I don't fit into any box you're used to. I'm not pack, not rogue, Not trying to use you or gain something, I'm just here, and you don't know what to do with that. The silence stretched so long she thought she'd made a fatal mistake. Then Kael laughed. It was a short, sharp sound, more surprised than amused, but it was real. You're either very brave or very stupid. Probably both. He shook his head, something shifting in his posture, less rigid. 3 days ago, I executed a pack leader for treason. 2 weeks before that, I broke an alliance that took 5 years to build because they tried to undermine my authority. I spend my life making decisions that affect thousands of wolves, and I can't afford hesitation or weakness. He paused. And then you stumble into my car dripping wet and terrified, and instead of groveling, you challenge me over a locked door. So it's been a long time since anyone surprised me. Elara's heart did something complicated in her chest. That's why you're keeping me here? Because I'm surprising? I'm keeping you here because sending you away would cause complications I don't feel like dealing with. His tone flattened back to business. Guards asking questions, protocols, paperwork. You're easier to contain than the bureaucracy you'd trigger. It was a lie, or at least not the whole truth. She could see it in the slight tension around his eyes, the way he had deflected instead of answering directly. But she didn't push. Fine, she said. Then I have another question. Of course you do. Can I sit out here? The compartment is nice, but it's making me claustrophobic. Cale gestured toward the empty chair across from his. Sit. She did, sinking into leather so soft it felt like a crime. For a while, neither of them spoke. The rain drummed against the windows. The train hummed beneath them. Finally, Cale picked up his book again. If you're going to be out here, stay quiet. I'm reading. What is it? He held up the cover, Territorial Dynamics in Post-War Northern Packs. Light reading, Elara said dryly. His mouth twitched. It's homework. 4? The Gathering. There'll be treaties, alliances, wolves trying to leverage old grievances into new power. He turned a page. I need to know the history better than they do. Elara pulled her knees up to her chest, watching him. Do you like it, being Alpha King? Does it matter? Probably not, but I'm curious. Cale was quiet for a long moment. I'm good at it. That's what matters. That's not the same as liking it. No, he agreed. It's not. Something in his voice made her chest ache. She recognized that tone. The sound of someone who'd stopped asking themselves what they wanted because the answer didn't matter anymore. What would you do? She asked softly. If you could be anything? He looked at her over the top of his book, his gray eyes unreadable. That's a dangerous question. Why? Because some cages don't have keys. And there it was, the crack in his armor, just a hairline fracture barely visible, but real. Elara pulled her threadbare blanket from her bag and wrapped it around her shoulders. I wanted to be a teacher, she said into the silence. Before my pack dissolved. I was studying early childhood education, almost finished my degree. What stopped you? Money? Time? The fact that most schools won't hire packless wolves because we're considered unstable. She shrugged. Now I work tables and try to save enough to maybe finish someday. That's why you're going to the gathering? Looking for a pack? Looking for options. A pack would be nice, but I'm not holding my breath. She pulled the blanket tighter. Packless wolves don't exactly get first pick. Cale set down his book. You know what happens at these gatherings. It wasn't a question, but she answered anyway. Politics, mating bonds, territorial dick measuring. His mouth twitched again. Eloquent. Accurate. True. He leaned back in his chair. You'll be eaten alive. Probably. So why go? Because staying in Thornmere means watching my life get smaller and smaller until I disappear completely. She met his eyes. At least at the gathering, I have a chance, even if it's a small one. Cale studied her, something shifting in his expression. You're tougher than you look. I've had practice. The train rattled over another junction. Outside, the rain was starting to ease, revealing glimpses of mountains in the distance. Get some sleep, Cale said, picking up his book again. Tomorrow will be longer. Elara wanted to ask what he meant by that, but exhaustion was pulling at her bones. She stood, clutching her blanket. Cale? He looked up. Thank you for not throwing me off the train. His expression gave nothing away. Don't thank me yet. She didn't know what that meant, but she was too tired to figure it out. She slipped back into the sleeping compartment and collapsed onto the bed. Her last thought before sleep took her was that the Alpha King was lonelier than anyone she'd ever met. And somehow, that made him more dangerous than all his power combined. Elara woke to the smell of coffee and the realization that someone was watching her. She sat up fast, her heart hammering, blanket tangled around her legs. Through the half-open compartment door, she could see Kyle standing by the window in the main car, a cup in his hand. He wasn't looking at her, or at least, he wasn't anymore, but she'd felt the weight of his attention like a physical touch. The morning light was thin and gray, filtering through clouds that pressed low against the mountains. They were higher now, the landscape outside transformed from flat plains to rocky peaks and deep ravines. She stumbled into the bathroom, splashed cold water on her face, and tried to tame her hair into something that didn't look like she'd been electrocuted. Her reflection stared back, pale, tired, with circles under her eyes that makeup couldn't fix even if she'd had any. When she emerged, Kyle was sitting in his usual chair, reading a different book. He didn't look up. There's coffee, he said. Cabinet on the left. Elara found the pot, real coffee, not the cheap instant powder she was used to, and poured herself a cup. The first sip almost made her groan, rich and dark and perfect. Sleep well? Kyle asked, still not looking at her. Better than I expected. She took another sip. You? I don't sleep much. She glanced at him. He looked the same as yesterday, perfectly composed, not a hair out of place. But there was something around his eyes, a tightness that spoke of exhaustion held at bay through sheer will. When was the last time you slept more than 4 hours? She asked. Now he did look up, one eyebrow raised. Why? Just curious. Don't be. Elara sat in the chair across from him, cradling her coffee. Outside, the train curved around a mountainside, revealing a drop so steep it made her stomach lurch. Far below, a river cut through the rocks like a silver thread. We're in the Black Ridge Mountains, Kyle said, following her gaze, halfway to the capital. It's beautiful. It's deadly. These mountains have killed more wolves than any war. He turned back to his book. We'll be passing through Widow's Gap this afternoon. The tracks run along a cliff face. One derailment and everyone dies. Cheerful thought. Realistic thought. He flipped a page. The world doesn't care about optimism. Elara studied him over the rim of her cup. Is that what you tell yourself? That being cold and realistic is the same as being strong? His eyes snapped to hers, sharp as broken glass. Excuse me? You heard me. You've been here one day and you think you understand me? I understand loneliness. She set down her cup. And you're the loneliest person I've ever met. The silence that followed felt like standing on the edge of a blade. Kale closed his book slowly, deliberately. You don't know anything about my life. I know you're the most powerful alpha in the territory, and you spend your time alone on a train reading political theory instead of surrounding yourself with advisors and pack. She leaned forward. I know you kept a nobody wolf in your private car instead of following protocol. And I know that when I asked what you'd do if you could be anything, you didn't have an answer ready. That doesn't mean... It means you've been the Alpha King for so long you've forgotten how to be anything else. Her voice softened. That's lonely, even if you won't admit it. Kale stood abruptly, the movement sharp enough to make her flinch. He crossed to the window, his back rigid. You think you're clever, reading people, finding their soft spots. I'm not trying to hurt you. Then what are you trying to do? Talk to you like you're a person instead of a title. He laughed, but it was harsh. I haven't been a person in 10 years. The moment I took the crown, that ended. That's not true. Isn't it? He turned to face her, and the raw anger in his expression stole her breath. You want to know what happens when an Alpha King shows weakness? When he admits he's tired or uncertain or wants something other than power? He took a step toward her. His enemies circle. His allies question. His pack fractures. Weakness is contagious, Elara. One crack and the whole structure collapses. So you just don't feel anything? I feel everything. The words came out rough. I just don't let it matter. Elara's wolf whimpered at the pain beneath his anger. She stood facing him across the small space. That's not strength. That's just slow death. It's survival. It's a cage. His jaw clenched. You don't understand the weight of what I carry. You're right, I don't. She held his gaze. But I understand what it's like to be so afraid of being weak that you forget how to be real. Something flickered in his eyes. Recognition, maybe? Or something darker. Why do you care? I don't know. And it was true. She barely knew this man, had every reason to fear him. But standing here, seeing the cracks in his armor, she felt something shift in her chest. Maybe because everyone else is too scared to. Cale stared at her for a long moment, his gray eyes searching hers like he was trying to solve an equation that didn't add up. Then he turned away. Don't, he said quietly. Don't try to fix me. I'm not one of your broken things. I'm not trying to fix you. I'm just talking to me like I'm a person. I know. He picked up his coffee, his movements carefully controlled. But I'm not. Not anymore. The sooner you accept that, the easier the next 2 days will be. Elara wanted to argue, wanted to push back against the wall he was rebuilding brick by brick. But she recognized the look in his eyes, the same look she'd seen in the mirror after her pact dissolved, when she'd decided that needing nothing was safer than risking everything. So she let it go. For now. By midday, the tension had settled into something brittle. They moved around each other carefully, speaking only when necessary. Kyle read or stared out the window. Elara tried to distract herself with her paperback, but the words kept blurring together. Her wolf was restless, pacing inside her chest. Something about being this close to Cale set her on edge. Not fear exactly, but awareness. Every time he moved, every shift in his breathing, her wolf tracked it like prey. Except he wasn't prey. He was an apex predator, and her wolf knew it. The train began to slow as they approached Widow's Gap. Elara pressed her face to the window, watching the tracks curve along the cliff face. Below, the drop was dizzying, hundreds of feet of empty air before the rocks and river. One side of the train was mountain, the other was nothing. Beautiful, isn't it? Cale's voice came from behind her. She jumped, not having heard him approach. He stood close enough that she could feel the heat radiating off him, his reflection visible in the glass. Terrifying, she corrected. That too. They stood like that for a moment, the train crawling along the narrow ledge. Elara's hands were pressed flat against the glass, her breath fogging it up. When I was younger, Kyle said quietly, I used to take this route every summer. My father would bring me to the capital for the Alliance meetings. He paused. I loved this part. The danger of it, the way it made everything else feel small. Elara glanced at him. What changed? I did. His expression was unreadable. Danger stops being exciting when you're responsible for thousands of lives. Do you ever miss it, being young enough to find danger exciting? Every day. The admission surprised her. She turned to face him, her back against the window. Then why? The train lurched. Not much. Just a sudden jolt, like hitting a pothole. But at this speed on this track, it was enough to send Elara stumbling. Cale's hand shot out, catching her arm and steadying her against him. For a heartbeat, they were pressed together, his hand warmed through her thin sleeve. She could feel his chest rise and fall, could smell something clean and sharp like pine and winter air. Their eyes met. Her wolf surged forward, sudden and fierce, reaching for something in him. And his wolf answered. She felt it like a pulse of electricity, raw and overwhelming. Cale released her like she'd burned him, stepping back fast. Sorry, she said, her voice rough. I lost my balance. It's fine. But his tone said it wasn't. He looked shaken, his careful control cracked. The tracks are unstable here. Old construction. Another lurch, harder this time. The lights flickered. Cale's entire demeanor changed. He crossed to the door and yanked it open, stepping into the corridor. Elara followed before she could think better of it. The narrow hallway ran the length of the car, doors on both sides leading to other compartments. At the far end, she could see a guard in dark uniform running toward them. Your Majesty, the guard panted, skidding to a stop. We have a situation. Report. The lead engineer spotted wolves on the tracks. 3 of them. They're not moving. Kale's expression went cold and hard. Show me. He strode toward the front of the train, Elara trailing behind. The guard shot her a confused look but didn't stop her. They passed through 2 more cars, both empty, both gleaming with the same expensive finishes, before reaching the engine compartment. The engineer, a grizzled older wolf with oil-stained hands, pointed through the windscreen. There, 1/4 mile ahead. Elara squeezed between Kyle and the engineer to see. 3 wolves stood on the tracks, spread out in a line. Not in wolf form, human, but their stance was aggressive, territorial. Behind them, the tracks disappeared into a tunnel carved through the mountain. Can we stop in time? Kyle asked, his voice flat. Not at this speed, not on this grade. Then don't stop. Run them down if they don't move. The engineer's face went pale. Your Majesty, those aren't random wolves. Kale's jaw was tight. They're positioned too deliberately. This is a challenge. Or a trap, Elara said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. She flushed but held her ground. If they're challenging you, they want you to stop, want you to engage. Why else risk standing in front of a moving train? Kyle's eyes narrowed. She's right. He turned to the engineer. Sound the horn. Give them 1 chance to move. If they don't, plow through them. The horn blasted, loud enough to rattle Elara's bones. The 3 wolves on the tracks didn't flinch. Idiots, Kyle muttered. Then louder to the guard. Get armed wolves to the external platforms. If anyone tries to board when we pass, shoot them. We're going through? Elara asked. We're not stopping for a territorial pissing match in the middle of Widow's Gap. He glanced at her. Get back to the cabin. Now. What if... Now, Elara. The authority in his voice made her wolf whimper, but she shoved it down. I'm not hiding while you... The first wolf jumped, not away from the tracks, toward the train. He hit the front of the engine with enough force to dent metal, his claws scraping for purchase. Through the windscreen, Elara saw his eyes flash gold, saw his mouth open in a snarl. Then 2 more jumped from the sides, materializing from behind rocks. It's an ambush, the engineer shouted, already reaching for the emergency brake. Don't! Kale grabbed his hand. Stopping gives them what they want. Faster. Go faster. The engine roared, speed increasing. The wolf on the front lost his grip and tumbled away, disappearing over the cliff edge with a scream that cut off abruptly. But more were coming. Elara saw them now, dozens of wolves emerging from the tunnel ahead, from crevices in the mountain, from places that should have been impossible to hide. They swarmed the tracks like ants, some in wolf form, some human, all moving with coordinated precision. Raiders, the engineer breathed. Mountain raiders. They've never attacked a royal train before. First time for everything, Kale turned to the guard. Get every able wolf armed into the external doors. No one boards this train. The guard ran. Kyle looked at Elara. I told you to get back. And I'm telling you, I'm staying. This isn't your fight. It is now. She grabbed a fire extinguisher off the wall, the closest thing to a weapon she could find. I'm not leaving you. He stared at her like she'd lost her mind. You think a fire extinguisher is going to help against raiders? You think I care? She met his eyes. You kept me on this train. That makes me part of this, whether you like it or not. So either use me or lock me up, but stop wasting time. For a moment, she thought he'd throw her back to the cabin himself. Then something shifted in his expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition. Can you shift? He asked. Yes. How fast? Fast enough. Stay behind me. If I tell you to run, you run. Understood? Understood. The train hit the swarm. The impact was immediate and brutal. Bodies slammed against the sides, claws scrabbling for purchase. The windows cracked, but held. Somewhere behind them, Elara heard gunshots, the guards engaging. Kyle moved to the door leading to the external platform, his entire body shifting. Not a full change, but enough. His eyes went gold, his canines lengthening, his hands sprouting claws that could tear through steel. He opened the door. The wind hit like a fist, cold and vicious. The platform was narrow, barely wide enough for 2 people. Below, the cliff face blurred past. One wrong step, and it was a long fall to nothing. A raider lunged from the roof, landing on the platform in a crouch. Cale didn't hesitate. He grabbed the raider by the throat and threw him off the train with enough force that the body arced out into open air, tumbling end over end before disappearing into the ravine. Two more came from behind, dropping from above. Cale spun, faster than anything that size should move, and caught one in the chest with claws that punched through ribs. The raider screamed and fell. The second one got past him, straight toward Elara. Her wolf surged up, panic and fury mixing into something hot and wild. She didn't think, just moved. Swung the fire extinguisher with everything she had. It connected with the raider's skull with a wet crunch. He dropped, twitching. Elara stood over him, breathing hard, her hands shaking. She'd never hit anyone before, never hurt anyone. The raider stopped twitching. "Good," Cale said from behind her, his voice rough. "Now get inside." "There's more. I know. Inside. Now." She stumbled back through the door, her legs weak. Cale followed, slamming it shut and locking it. Through the small window, she could see more raiders swarming the train, could hear the chaos of fighting spreading through the cars behind them. "Why are they doing this?" she asked, her voice too high. "What do they want?" "Me." Cale wiped blood off his claws, not his blood. "They want to prove they can kill an Alpha King. That's insane. That's territory." He moved to the engineer. "How long until we're through the gap?" 10 minutes if we maintain speed." "Then maintain it. I don't care if we hit every raider between here and the tunnel. Don't stop." The engineer nodded, pale but steady. Cale turned to Elara. "You killed that raider." "I know." Her hands were still shaking. "Does that bother you?" She thought about it, about the weight of the extinguisher, the sound it made, the way the body fell. Should it? Most wolves hesitate the first time. I didn't have time to hesitate. He was going to kill you. Something shifted in Cale's expression, softened, just for a moment. "Thank you." "Don't thank me yet. We're not out of this." As if to prove her point, the train shuddered again. This time the impact came from above, something heavy hitting the roof hard enough to dent it inward. "They're coming through the top," the engineer shouted. Cale swore. "How many guards do we have?" 8, maybe 10. "Against how many raiders?" 50, maybe more. The math wasn't good. Elara watched Cale's face, saw the calculation happening behind his eyes. They were outnumbered, trapped on a moving train with limited weapons and nowhere to run. But instead of fear, she saw something else in his expression. Rage. Pure, cold, controlled rage. "Stay here," he told her. "I'm going to the roof." "That's suicide." "It's strategy." He was already moving toward the ladder that led to the roof access hatch. "They expect me to barricade and defend. They don't expect me to hunt them. You're one wolf against dozens. I'm the Alpha King." He looked back at her, and his eyes were pure gold now, his wolf fully present. "I don't lose." Then he climbed the ladder, threw open the hatch, and disappeared into the wind and chaos above. Elara stood frozen, her heart in her throat. The engineer looked at her. "Is he always like this?" "I have no idea," she admitted. "I only met him yesterday." Above them, the sounds of fighting intensified. Screams, snarls, the wet sound of claws through flesh, and beneath it all, a roar that shook the train, Cale's wolf, unleashed and furious. Elara closed her eyes and prayed to nothing in particular that he'd come back alive. He came back, but not the way she expected. The hatch opened and Cale dropped through, landing in a crouch. Blood soaked his clothes, most of it not his, but some was. A gash across his shoulder, claw marks down his ribs. His breathing was labored, his eyes still gold. "How many?" Elara asked, rushing to him. "Enough." He straightened, wincing. "The tunnel's clear. They pulled back." "Why?" "Because I killed their leader and threw his body off the train." His voice was flat, matter of fact. The rest scattered. The engineer let out a shaky breath. "We're through the gap, Your Majesty. Clear tracks ahead." Cale nodded, then swayed slightly. Elara caught his arm. "You're hurt." "I'm fine." "You're bleeding." "I've had worse." She glared at him. "Will you just, for once, admit you need help?" He looked at her, and something in his expression cracked. The rage drained away, leaving only exhaustion. Fine, I need help. Elara guided him back to the main cabin, easing him into a chair. His shirt was shredded, revealing the full extent of the damage. The shoulder wound was deep, still bleeding. The claw marks were shallower but angry red. "Do you have a medical kit?" she asked the engineer who'd followed them. "In the cabinet, second door." She found it, extensive, professional, the kind of kit that could handle anything short of major surgery. She cleaned her hands, then Kael's wounds, working quickly but carefully. He didn't flinch, didn't make a sound, just watched her with those gold-faded to gray eyes, his expression unreadable. "This is going to scar," she said, pressing gauze to his shoulder. "Everything scars. Poetic. Realistic." She taped the gauze down, then moved to the claw marks on his ribs. This close, she could feel the heat coming off him, could smell the blood and sweat, and something underneath that was purely him. Her wolf stirred, interested. She shoved it down. "You shouldn't have gone up there alone," she said, not looking at him. "Probably not. You could have died. But I didn't." "What if you had?" She looked up, meeting his eyes. "What happens to everyone if the Alpha King dies in a raider attack on a train? Chaos, infighting, probably civil war." He said it like he was discussing the weather, which is why I couldn't afford to die. That's not an answer. It's the only one that matters. Elara finished bandaging his ribs, then sat back. "You're impossible." "So you've said." "I mean it. You throw yourself into danger, refuse help, act like you're invincible. I am invincible." But there was no conviction behind the words, just exhaustion. She reached out without thinking, her hand covering his. "No, you're not. And pretending you are is going to kill you eventually." Kael looked down at their hands, his expression strange, like he couldn't quite figure out what he was seeing. "Why do you care?" he asked again, quieter this time. "I told you, I don't know." "That's not good enough." "Then maybe," she took a breath, "maybe because when I look at you, I see someone who's forgotten they're allowed to be more than their worst fear." His fingers tightened around hers. "And what's my worst fear?" "Weakness, failure, being anything less than perfect." She paused. "Being human. I'm not human. I'm wolf." "You know what I mean." He did. She could see it in the way his jaw clenched, the way he looked away. "Elara." His voice was rough. "You need to stop." "Stop what?" "Seeing things in me that aren't there. I'm not some broken thing you can fix with kindness. I know that." "Do you? Because you keep looking at me like—" He trailed off, shaking his head. "Like what?" "Like I'm worth saving." The words hung between them, raw and painful. Elara squeezed his hand. "Maybe you are. I'm not. Maybe I don't care." Kael pulled his hand away, standing abruptly. He swayed, catching himself against the window. "This is a mistake." "What is?" "This. Us. Whatever this is." He gestured vaguely between them. "You're a packless wolf heading to a gathering you'll probably hate. I'm an Alpha King with a target on my back. In 2 days, we'll reach the capital and you'll disappear into the crowd and I'll go back to my life. This doesn't mean anything." "Then why does it feel like it does?" He didn't answer. Outside, the mountains were giving way to foothills. The sun was setting, painting everything in shades of orange and gold, beautiful and temporary, like everything else. "Get some rest," Kael said finally, not looking at her. "We've got another day before the capital." Elara wanted to argue, wanted to push back against the wall he was rebuilding, but she could see the exhaustion in every line of his body, could hear the pain beneath his words. So she stood and walked to the compartment door. "Kael?" He looked at her. "You saved my life today. On that platform. Thank you." "You saved mine first." "Then we're even." "No." His gray eyes held hers. "We're not." She didn't know what he meant by that. Didn't know if she wanted to. But as she closed the compartment door behind her and sank onto the bed, her hands still shaking from adrenaline and something deeper, she realized one thing with absolute clarity. Whatever was happening between them, it wasn't nothing. and that terrified her more than any raider ever could. Sleep didn't come. Elara lay in the dark compartment, listening to the rhythm of the train and the sound of her own breathing. Her hands had finally stopped shaking, but her mind wouldn't settle. She kept seeing the raider's face, kept feeling the impact of the fire extinguisher, kept hearing that wet crunch. She'd killed someone today. The thought circled her brain like a vulture. Self-defense didn't make it feel any cleaner. Necessary didn't make it hurt any less. Around midnight, she gave up and slipped out of the compartment. Kyle sat in his chair by the window, still dressed in his blood-stained clothes. He hadn't moved, hadn't changed, just sat there staring at nothing, a half-empty bottle of whiskey on the table beside him. "Can't sleep?" His voice was rough, like he'd been screaming, or maybe just silent for too long. "No." She crossed to the opposite chair and sat. "You? I told you, I don't sleep much. Even after almost dying? Especially after almost dying." He poured himself another measure of whiskey, the amber liquid catching the lamplight. Adrenaline doesn't fade that fast. They sat in silence for a while. Outside, the landscape had flattened into rolling farmland, dark and featureless under a clouded sky. No moon, no stars, just darkness. "Does it get easier?" Elara asked quietly. "The killing." Kyle looked at her, something shifting in his expression. "You're thinking about the raider." "I can't stop thinking about him." "Good," she frowned. "Good? If it was easy, you'd be broken." He took a sip of whiskey. "The weight of it, that's what keeps you human. The moment you stop feeling it is the moment you become something else." "Is that what happened to you?" His jaw tightened. "I feel it, every single one. I just don't let it stop me from doing what needs to be done." "How many? How many what? How many wolves have you killed?" The question hung between them like smoke. "More than I can count," Kyle said finally. "Less than I deserve." Elara pulled her knees up to her chest, wrapping her arms around them. "I keep seeing his face, keep hearing the sound. It won't stop." "It won't, not tonight, maybe not for a long time." He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "But it will fade. The sharp edges will dull, and one day you'll realize you haven't thought about it in a week, and you'll feel guilty for forgetting. That's bleak. That's life." She studied him in the lamplight, the exhaustion carved into his face, the way he held himself like every muscle hurt. The bandages she'd applied were already showing spots of red. He needed rest, needed to heal, but he just sat there, drinking and staring at nothing. "Come here," she said suddenly. He blinked. "What?" "Come here." She patted the space beside her on the couch. "You're sitting like you're waiting for execution. It's depressing." "I'm fine where I am." "You're bleeding through your bandages and drinking alone in the dark. You're not fine anywhere." She met his eyes. "Just come here, please." For a moment she thought he'd refuse. Then he stood, moving with the careful stiffness of someone in pain, and crossed to the couch. He sat at the far end, maintaining distance. Elara shifted closer, closing the gap. "Let me see your shoulder." "It's fine." "It's bleeding. Let me see." He sighed but didn't argue, shrugging out of what was left of his shirt. The bandage was soaked through, the gauze dark with blood. She peeled it back carefully, revealing the gash underneath. It was healing, faster than any human wound would, but not fast enough. "You need stitches," she said. "I'll heal." "Not if it gets infected." She found the medical kit again, threading a needle with practiced hands. "This is going to hurt." "Everything hurts." She worked quickly, stitching the edges of the wound together with small, precise movements. Kyle didn't flinch, didn't make a sound, just watched her hands, his breathing steady and controlled. "Where'd you learn to do this?" he asked. "My mother, she was a healer before." Elara trailed off, focusing on the needle. "Before she died?" "How?" "Rogue attack. When I was 15. She tied off the stitch and started another. My father went after them, never came back." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. It was a long time ago." But her hands were shaking slightly, the memories too close to the surface tonight. "I used to help her in the clinic, learned the basics. Never thought I'd be using them on an Alpha King in a train car." Life's funny that way. Hilarious. She finished the last stitch and bandaged it fresh, her fingers lingering on his skin longer than necessary. He was warm, his pulse strong beneath her touch. When she looked up, she found him watching her with an intensity that made her breath catch. Elara, don't. She pulled her hand back. Don't push me away again. Not tonight. I'm trying to protect you. From what? From me. His voice dropped. From what happens when we reach the capital and reality catches up. I don't care about the capital. I care about now. She shifted closer, close enough that their knees touched. We almost died today, both of us. And all I can think is that I don't want to waste what little time we have left pretending there's nothing here. Kael's hands clenched into fists. You don't understand what you're asking. Then explain it to me. The moment we arrive, you'll be scrutinized, questioned. Every wolf in that gathering will want to know who you are and why you were on my train. His gray eyes were dark, troubled. They'll tear you apart looking for weakness, for leverage, for anything they can use against me. So we tell them the truth, that I boarded the wrong car by accident. You think they'll believe that? A packless wolf coincidentally ends up in my private cabin for 3 days? He shook his head. They'll assume you're a spy, or a plant, or that I'm keeping you as something else. The implication hit her hard. A mistress. Worse, a weakness. He stood abruptly, pacing. An alpha king can have lovers, but he can't show preference, can't seem attached. The moment they think you matter to me, you become a target. Elara stood too, following him. So what are you saying, that we just pretend these 3 days never happened? I'm saying that's the smart choice, the safe choice. I don't want safe. She grabbed his arm, forcing him to face her. I want real. I want to stop feeling invisible. And when I'm with you, I don't feel invisible anymore. Something cracked in his expression. You should feel invisible. It's safer that way. I'm tired of being safe. I'm tired of making myself small so I don't bother anyone. I'm tired of pretending I don't want things just because wanting them is dangerous. Her voice rose. You make me feel seen, Kael. For the first time in 3 years, someone is actually looking at me instead of through me. And you want me to just walk away from that? Yes, he said, but the word came out broken. Because caring about you will get you killed. Then maybe I'd rather die being seen than live being invisible. Kael stared at her, his breathing harsh. Then he closed the distance between them in 2 strides and kissed her. It wasn't gentle, wasn't careful. It was desperate and fierce and tasted like whiskey and blood and 3 days of tension finally breaking. His hands came up to cup her face, his touch surprisingly tender despite the ferocity of the kiss. Elara's wolf howled in triumph, surging forward to meet his. The connection snapped into place like a live wire, electric and overwhelming and absolutely right. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Kael pressed his forehead to hers. This is a mistake, he whispered. Probably. It's going to end badly. Most things do. He laughed, the sound raw and surprised. You're going to destroy me. Good. She kissed him again, softer this time. You need destroying. They stayed like that for a long moment, wrapped together in the lamplight, the train carrying them toward a future neither of them could control. Finally, Kael pulled back. You should sleep. We'll reach the capital in the morning. Will you sleep? Eventually. Then I'll stay up with you. Elara, I'm not leaving you alone tonight. Not after everything. She took his hand, lacing their fingers together. So either you sleep or we both stay awake. Your choice. He looked at their joined hands, something vulnerable crossing his face. No one's taken care of me in a long time. I know. I don't know how to let them. Then learn. She tugged him back toward the couch. Start with sitting down and finishing that whiskey. Then we'll work our way up to actual rest. Against all odds, he smiled. A real smile that transformed his whole face, making him look younger, less burdened. You're trouble, he said. I know. They settled onto the couch together, Elara tucked against his uninjured side, his arm around her shoulders. Outside, the darkness began to give way to gray, pre-dawn light. Tell me something, Kael said quietly. Something no one else knows. Elara thought about it. Sometimes I dream about my old pack. Not nightmares, just memories. And when I wake up, I forget for a second that they're gone, that I'm alone. And then I remember, and it's like losing them all over again. His arm tightened around her. I dream about my father. He was a brutal bastard, but he was a good king. Better than I'll ever be. And sometimes I wake up and think he's still alive, that I'm still just the heir waiting my turn. Then I remember he's dead, and I killed the wolves who murdered him, and it still doesn't feel like enough. They sat in shared silence, two broken people holding each other against the dark. We're a mess, Elara said finally. Completely. Think we have a chance? No. Me neither. She tilted her head up to look at him. But I'm willing to try anyway. Kael kissed her forehead. You're either very brave or very stupid. Still probably both. Dawn broke gray and cold. Elara woke to find herself still on the couch, Kael's coat draped over her like a blanket. He was standing by the window, already dressed in fresh clothes. Black suit, perfectly tailored, every inch the Alpha King again. How long was I out? She asked, sitting up. 3 hours. You needed it. Did you sleep? An hour. Maybe. She stood, stretching out the kinks in her back. Through the window, she could see the landscape had changed completely. They were in city outskirts now, industrial buildings, warehouses, the sprawl of civilization creeping closer. How long until we arrive? She asked. 2 hours, maybe less? He turned to face her, his expression carefully neutral. We need to talk about what happens when we get there. Her stomach dropped. Okay. The train will be met by my guard, by pack representatives, by politicians and wolves looking for any sign of weakness. He crossed to her, his movements precise. When those doors open, you need to disappear into the crowd. Take a different exit. Don't let anyone connect you to me. Kael, listen. His tone was firm but not cruel. I'll have someone waiting at the south platform entrance. One of my personal guards. You'll recognize him by the silver insignia. He'll take you to a safe house in the city. You'll stay there during the gathering. You're hiding me. I'm protecting you. By pretending I don't exist? By keeping you alive. He gripped her shoulders. The moment you're seen with me, every enemy I have will target you. And I have a lot of enemies. Elara pulled away. So that's it? We just go back to being strangers? We were always strangers. These 3 days don't change that. The words cut deeper than any knife. You don't mean that. I do. But his eyes told a different story. This was a mistake. A beautiful mistake, but still a mistake. Stop lying to yourself. I'm trying to keep you safe. I don't want safe, she was shouting now, her wolf snarling. I want to matter. I want to be more than just another packless wolf who gets forgotten. And you made me believe I could be. You made me feel like I was worth something. You are worth something. Then why are you throwing me away? Kael's composure cracked. Because keeping you means putting a target on your back that I can't protect you from. Because every wolf in that gathering will see you as leverage against me. Because loving you would make you the most dangerous thing in my life. And I won't let that happen. The word hung between them like a grenade. Loving. You love me, Elara said quietly. Kael looked away. I didn't say that. Yes, you did. You meant exactly what you said. She crossed to him, forcing him to meet her eyes. You love me, and you're terrified of it. Love is weakness. Love is vulnerability. Love is human. She put her hand on his chest, feeling his heart race beneath her palm. And you're so afraid of being human that you'd rather destroy the best thing that's happened to either of us than risk feeling something real. It's not about risk. It's about survival. No, it's about control. Her voice softened. You've spent so long being the Alpha King that you've forgotten how to be anything else. And the thought of letting someone in, of needing someone, terrifies you more than any enemy ever could. Kael's hands came up to cover hers. You don't understand the weight I carry. Then let me help carry it. I can't. Why not? Because eventually I'll fail you. I'll prioritize the kingdom over you. I'll make a choice that hurts you to protect thousands. And I can't, his voice broke. I can't be the one who destroys you. Elara stepped closer, close enough that she could feel his breath on her face. I'm already destroyed, Kael. My pack is gone. My family is dead. I've been surviving on scraps and hope for 3 years. You're not going to break me. I'm already broken. Then I'll make it worse. Maybe. She tilted her head up. Or maybe we'll put each other back together. He kissed her then, desperate and fierce and full of everything he couldn't say. She kissed him back just as hard, pouring 3 days of fear and hope and impossible feelings into it. When they broke apart, Kael rested his forehead against hers. I can't promise you a happy ending, he whispered. I don't need happy. I just need real. Real is messy. I know. Real is dangerous. I know that too. He pulled back, studying her face like he was memorizing it. When we get to the capital, stay close to me. Don't hide, don't run. Whatever happens, we face it together. Elara's breath caught. You're serious? I'm making a choice. Probably the stupidest choice I've ever made. He brushed a strand of hair from her face. But I'm done pretending you don't matter. Done pretending I can just walk away. If they want to use you against me, they'll have to go through both of us. They'll destroy us. Probably. You'll lose everything. Maybe. His gray eyes held hers. But losing you feels worse. The train whistle blew, long and loud, signaling their approach to the capital station. Elara's heart hammered. What do we do? We step off this train together. We face the wolves together, and we see what happens. He took her hand. No more hiding, no more pretending. We do this honestly or not at all. That's terrifying. I know. I'm probably going to get us both killed. Probably. He smiled, and it was real and warm and utterly unguarded. But at least we'll die being seen. The train began to slow, the station coming into view. Through the window, Elara could see the platform, packed with wolves in expensive clothes, with guards in formal uniforms, with the weight of expectation and tradition and 1,000 years of hierarchy. She squeezed Kael's hand. I'm scared. Good. Fear means you're alive. He pulled her close, kissing her one more time. Stay with me. No matter what happens, stay with me. I will. The train pulled into the station with a hiss of steam and screech of brakes. Outside, hundreds of faces turned toward the royal car, waiting for the Alpha King to emerge. Kael straightened his jacket, every inch the ruler again. But he didn't let go of her hand. Ready? He asked. No. Me neither. The door opened, and together they stepped into the light. The platform erupted, not with cheers or welcome, with shocked silence that felt worse than any violence. Hundreds of wolves stared as Kael descended the train steps with Elara at his side, their hands clasped openly. The silence broke into whispers, then murmurs, then a wave of noise that crashed over them like a physical force. Elara's wolf whimpered, every instinct screaming to submit, to make herself small, to disappear. But Kael's hand was steady in hers, his presence like an anchor. A line of guards in silver and black stood at attention, their faces carefully blank. Behind them, pack representatives clustered in groups, their expressions ranging from shock to calculation to barely concealed hostility. And at the center of it all, standing on a raised platform, was a woman who made Elara's blood run cold. She was beautiful in the way glaciers were beautiful, sharp and cold and absolutely unforgiving. Silver hair pulled back in an intricate braid, eyes like chips of ice. She wore formal robes marked with sigils Elara didn't recognize, but the authority radiating from her was unmistakable. Kael, the woman's voice cut through the noise like a blade. How unexpected. Lyris, Kael's tone was perfectly neutral. Always a pleasure. Is it? Lyris's gaze slid to Elara, dissecting her in seconds. And who is this? The entire platform went silent, waiting. Kael's hand tightened around Elara's. This is Elara Vance, and she's under my protection. I see. Lyris descended from the platform, moving with predatory grace. A packless wolf, on your private train for 3 days. She circled them slowly. One might draw certain conclusions. One might, Kael agreed, but conclusions aren't facts. Then perhaps you'd care to explain the facts. Lyra stopped in front of them, her smile razor sharp. For the sake of clarity. Elara felt the trap closing, felt the weight of hundreds of eyes, heard the whispers spreading like wildfire. Every word Kael said now would be analyzed, weaponized, used against him. She made a decision. A stupid, reckless, probably suicidal decision. I boarded his train by accident, she said, her voice carrying across the platform. Wrong car. The door locked. We were trapped together for 3 days. She met Lyris's cold gaze. Nothing more complicated than that. Lyris's smile widened. How convenient. Not really. It was terrifying. Elara forced herself to sound calm. But the Alpha King was honorable, professional. He gave me a place to stay and made sure I was safe during the raider attack. The whispers intensified. Raider attack? Lyris turned to Kael. You didn't report an incident. We handled it. His tone was flat. 12 raiders. All dead or scattered. No casualties on our side. How heroic. Lyris's gaze returned to Elara. And you were there? A packless wolf with no combat training, present during a raid on the Alpha King's train? I defended myself. Did you? It wasn't a question. How many did you kill? The platform went silent again, the question hanging like a noose. Elara lifted her chin. 1. The shock rippled through the crowd. Packless wolves weren't supposed to fight. Weren't supposed to be capable of violence. It broke every assumption they had about her. Lyris's expression shifted, still calculating, but now with a hint of respect. Interesting. She saved my life, Kael said quietly. And I will not stand here and let you interrogate her like a criminal. No one's interrogating anyone. We're simply clarifying. Lyris gestured broadly. After all, the entire territory has gathered for this event. They deserve to know who has the Alpha King's ear, his trust. A pause. His favor. The implication was clear, public, damning. Kael's wolf rose to the surface, his eyes flashing gold. Careful, Lyris. Or what? You'll have me executed for asking questions. She laughed, cold and sharp. You can't silence everyone who wonders why a packless nobody is standing at your side instead of hiding in the crowd where she belongs. Elara felt the words like a slap. Every insecurity, every doubt, every fear she'd carried for 3 years crystallized in that moment. But Kael stepped forward, putting himself between her and Lyris. Elara stands at my side because I choose to have her there, he said, his voice carrying the full weight of his authority. And if you or anyone else has a problem with that, you're welcome to challenge me directly. But I will not tolerate anyone threatening her. Is that clear? Lyris's eyes narrowed. You'd stake your reputation on a packless wolf? I'd stake everything on her. The platform erupted again, this time in chaos. Wolves shouting, arguing, demanding explanations, guards moving to contain the crowd, pack representatives huddling together, their expressions ranging from shock to fury. And through it all, Elara stood frozen, Kael's words echoing in her head. He'd just claimed her, publicly, irrevocably. He'd made her a target. Lyris stepped back, her smile triumphant. Well then, I suppose that settles it. She raised her voice to carry over the noise. The Alpha King has made his choice clear. Elara Vance is under his direct protection. Anyone who harms her answers to him personally. It should have felt like a victory. Instead, it felt like a death sentence. Because now everyone knew, everyone was watching, and the wolves circling them weren't just curious anymore. They were hunting. Kael turned to her, his expression fierce. Stay close. Don't leave my sight. Kael, what have you done? What I should have done from the beginning. He pulled her toward the exit, guards forming a protective circle around them. No more hiding, no more pretending. They pushed through the crowd, Elara's heart hammering so hard she thought it might burst. Wolves pressed close, their faces hostile, curious, calculating. She heard the whispers, slut, gold digger, manipulator, spy. A hand grabbed her arm, yanking her backward. She spun, finding herself face to face with a young male wolf, his eyes burning with hatred. You don't belong here, he snarled. You're nothing. A packless bitch who seduced our king. Kael's fist connected with the wolf's jaw before he could finish. The crack echoed across the platform. The wolf dropped, unconscious. The crowd pulled back, shock written on every face. Anyone else? Kale's voice was deadly quiet, his eyes pure gold. Anyone else want to insult her? Touch her? Question her right to be here? No one answered. No one dared. He pulled Elara close, his arm around her waist. Let's go. They made it to the waiting cars, climbed in, the door slamming shut behind them. The vehicle pulled away from the station, leaving the chaos behind. Elara couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The weight of what just happened crashed over her like a wave. I'm sorry, Kael said, his voice rough. I'm so sorry. I should have prepared you, should have warned you about Lyris. She's the head of the Council of Elders. She's been trying to control me since I took the crown. You just punched someone for me. He deserved worse. You claimed me in front of everyone. You made me a target. I know. He pulled her against his chest, his arms wrapping around her. I know. And I'll spend every moment from now on keeping you safe. I swear it. Elara buried her face in his shirt, her whole body shaking. They hate me, all of them. They think I'm using you. Let them think what they want. I know the truth. What truth? He tilted her face up, his gray eyes fierce. That you're the strongest person I've ever met. That you walked into hell with me today and didn't back down. That you're exactly where you're supposed to be. She wanted to believe him, wanted to feel brave and strong and worthy, but all she felt was terrified. The car turned a corner and through the window, she caught a glimpse of the gathering venue. A massive complex of buildings, tents, and arenas stretching for miles. Thousands of wolves moved through it, a sea of pack colors and territorial markers. And somewhere in that sea, enemies were already planning, already hunting. Kael's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, his expression darkening. What? Elara asked. The council wants to meet tonight to discuss... He hesitated. To discuss you. What does that mean? It means they're going to try to separate us. Try to force me to send you away. His jaw clenched. They'll use every legal loophole, every tradition, every bit of leverage they have. Then maybe you should. Send me away. Before this destroys everything you've built. No. Kael, I said no. He gripped her hands. I'm done making choices based on fear, done sacrificing what matters for political convenience. They want to meet? Fine. We'll meet. And we'll face them together. Elara stared at him, seeing the determination in his eyes, the absolute conviction. And despite everything, despite the fear and the danger and the impossibility of it all, she believed him. Together, she echoed. Together. The car pulled through the gates of the royal compound, guards saluting as they passed. The building ahead was massive, all glass and steel and power, and somewhere inside wolves were waiting to tear them apart. But as Kael helped her out of the car, his hand steady in hers, Elara made a choice of her own. She wasn't going to hide anymore. Wasn't going to apologize for existing. If they wanted to make her a target, fine. She'd make sure they regretted it. The royal compound was a fortress disguised as elegance. Elara followed Kael through marble corridors lined with portraits of past Alpha Kings, their painted eyes tracking her like accusers. Guards stood at every intersection, their expressions blank but their judgment palpable. She could feel their stares burning into her back, could hear the whispers that started the moment they passed. Kael's hand stayed at the small of her back, steady and possessive. They reached a suite on the third floor, rooms so large her entire apartment could have fit in the entryway. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the gathering grounds, where thousands of wolves moved like ants through a carefully organized chaos. You'll stay here, Kael said, closing the door behind them. It's secure. My personal guards will be stationed outside. Elara turned to face him. You're leaving me here alone? I have to meet with my advisors, brief them on the raider attack, deal with the fallout from the station. He crossed to her, cupping her face. I'll be back before the council meeting tonight. And then what? We walk into a room full of wolves who want me gone and just hope for the best. We go in prepared. His thumb brushed her cheek. Lyris will try to discredit you, challenge your right to be here. The other council members will follow her lead unless we give them a reason not to. How do we do that? Kael was quiet for a moment, his gray eyes troubled. By proving you're not weak, not helpless, Not some packless wolf I'm protecting out of pity or other reasons. He pulled back. They need to see you as capable, valuable, someone who belongs in this world. Elara's stomach twisted. I'm not valuable. I'm a diner waitress with half a college degree. You killed a raider who was about to kill me. You stood on that platform and faced down Lyris without flinching. You've survived 3 years on your own with no pack and no support. His voice was fierce. You're stronger than half the wolves in this compound. You just don't see it yet. They won't see it either. Then we'll make them. He glanced at his watch. I'll send someone up with clothes. Something appropriate for the council meeting. And Elara? He caught her chin, forcing her to meet his eyes. Don't hide. Don't apologize. Walk into that room like you own it, because you do. You're with me, and that means you belong anywhere I go. Then he was gone, the door closing with a soft click. Elara stood alone in the massive suite, her reflection staring back from a dozen mirrors. She looked small, worn, exactly like what they all thought she was, a nobody who'd stumbled into something far beyond her reach. She thought about running, about slipping out a back exit and disappearing into the crowd. Nobody would miss her. Kyle would be better off without the complications she brought. But then she remembered the way he'd looked at her on the train, the way he'd kissed her, the way he'd stood between her and Lyris without hesitation. He'd chosen her. The least she could do was choose him back. A knock on the door pulled her from her thoughts. She opened it to find a young female wolf holding an armful of clothes, her expression carefully neutral. The Alpha King sent me, the girl said. I'm Mira. I'm here to help you prepare. Elara stepped aside, letting her in. Mira laid out the clothes on the bed, a simple but elegant dress in deep forest green, tailored to fit, with a high neckline and long sleeves. Conservative, respectful, the kind of thing pack wolves wore to formal gatherings. It's beautiful, Elara said quietly. The king chose it himself. Mira hesitated, then added, he's never done that before. Chosen clothes for someone. Never? Not in the 10 years I've worked here. Mira's expression softened slightly. He must care about you very much. Elara didn't know what to say to that, so she just nodded. Mira helped her into the dress. It fit perfectly, like it had been made for her, then worked on her hair, pulling it back into an intricate braid that made her look older, more sophisticated. There, Mira said, stepping back. You look like you belong. Elara studied her reflection. The girl staring back looked nothing like the waitress from Thornmere. She looked polished, put together. She looked like someone who might actually survive the night. Thank you, she told Mira. The girl smiled, genuine this time. Good luck. You're going to need it. After Mira left, Elara spent the next 3 hours pacing the suite and trying not to spiral into panic. She practiced what she'd say, how she'd stand, how she'd keep her hands from shaking when every wolf in that room looked at her like she was an intruder. She was staring out the window, watching the sun sink toward the horizon when the door opened. Kyle stepped in, now dressed in formal attire, all black, severe lines that made him look even more imposing. His eyes found her immediately, and something shifted in his expression. You look... He crossed to her slowly. You look perfect. I look terrified. That too. He took her hands. But you also look like someone who could walk into that council chamber and hold her own. I don't know if I can do this. Yes, you do. You've already done harder things. He pulled her close. Listen to me. Lyris is going to try to break you down. She'll question your motives, your past, your right to be here. She'll make it personal. How personal? Very. His jaw tightened. She'll imply you're using me, that you're a spy or a plant. She might even suggest you orchestrated the train situation to trap me. Elara pulled back. That's insane. That's politics. He guided her to sit on the couch, settling beside her. The council has been trying to control me since I took the crown. They want a king they can manipulate, someone who follows tradition and doesn't make waves. He paused. I'm not that king. And bringing you here, claiming you publicly, proves I won't be controlled. That terrifies them. So this isn't really about me. It's about both of us, about what we represent. His gray eyes were serious, a A packless wolf standing beside the Alpha King challenges everything they believe about hierarchy and power. If you can stand there, what's to stop other packless wolves from demanding respect? From refusing to stay invisible? Understanding crashed over her. I'm a symbol. You're a threat to the old order. He squeezed her hands. Which is why they'll come at you hard. They need to prove you don't belong. Need to make an example of you so no one else gets ideas. And if they succeed, they won't. The absolute conviction in his voice made her breath catch, because you're going to walk in there and show them exactly what a packless wolf can be. Strong, smart, unbreakable. He stood, pulling her up with him. Are you ready? No, she wasn't ready, wasn't prepared for any of this. But she met his eyes and lied anyway. Yes. Then let's go make them regret underestimating you. The council chamber was exactly as intimidating as she'd imagined. A circular room with the domed ceiling, lit by chandeliers that cast everything in harsh light. 12 chairs arranged in a semicircle, each occupied by an older wolf radiating power and authority. And in the center, 2 chairs facing the council, one for Kael, one for her. Every eye turned as they entered. Lyra sat in the center seat, her silver hair gleaming, her expression coldly triumphant. To her left, a massive male wolf with scarred hands and calculating eyes. To her right, a thin female with sharp features and sharper intelligence. The other council members ranged from openly hostile to cautiously neutral. Kael guided Elara to her seat, his hand lingering on her shoulder for just a moment before he took his own chair. Alpha King, Lyris began, her voice formal, thank you for joining us. You summoned me. I came. Kael's tone was flat. Let's not pretend this is a social call. Indeed. Lyris's gaze shifted to Elara. We're here to discuss Miss Vance, specifically her presence at this gathering and her relationship with you. My relationship with Elara is my business. Not when it affects the stability of the territory. The scarred male leaned forward. You've been Alpha King for 10 years, Your Majesty. In that time, you've maintained strict boundaries, no favorites, no public attachments. And now suddenly you arrive with a packless wolf and claim her openly? He shook his head. It raises questions. Such as? Kael's voice was dangerously quiet. Such as how she ended up on your private train, the thin female said. Such as what happened during those 3 days. Such as whether this is genuine or some kind of manipulation. Are you suggesting I'm being manipulated? Kael's eyes flashed gold. We're suggesting, Lyris cut in smoothly, that the circumstances are suspicious. A packless wolf with no credentials, no pack history, no background we can verify, and yet she's somehow captured the attention of the most powerful alpha in the territory? She smiled coldly. Forgive us for being skeptical. Elara felt the trap closing, felt the weight of their judgment pressing down like a physical force. But Kael's words echoed in her head. Don't hide. Don't apologize. She stood. Every council member went silent, staring at her like she'd just committed blasphemy. You want to know who I am? Elara's voice was steady, even though her heart was racing. Fine. I'll tell you. My name is Elara Vance. My pack was the Thornridge Pack, dissolved 3 years ago when our alpha died, and no one was strong enough to hold us together. My parents are dead, killed by rogues when I was 15. I've been on my own since the dissolution, working minimum wage jobs and sleeping in a room barely bigger than a closet. She met Lyris's eyes. I boarded the wrong train car by accident, the door locked. I was trapped with the Alpha King for 3 days. During that time, we were attacked by raiders. I killed one of them to protect him. That's it. That's the whole story. No manipulation, no grand plan, just a wrong turn that led somewhere I never expected. How convenient, Lyris said. A packless nobody stumbles into the Alpha King's private car and emerges 3 days later under his protection. You'll forgive us if we don't believe in fairy tales. I'm not asking you to believe anything. Elara's hands clenched at her sides. I'm telling you what happened. Whether you accept it or not is your problem, not mine. The scarred male stood. You dare speak to this council with such disrespect? I dare speak the truth. Elara held his gaze. You want me to grovel? Apologize for existing? Pretend I'm less than I am so you feel comfortable? She shook her head. I've spent 3 years making myself small. making myself invisible so I wouldn't bother anyone. I'm done with that. You're packless, the thin female said coldly. You have no status, no authority, no right to stand in this chamber and address us as an equal. Then what gives you the right to judge me? Elara's voice rose. Because you have a pack? Because you were born into power instead of having to fight for scraps? She took a step forward. I've survived things you can't imagine. I've lost everything and kept going. I've faced down raiders and council interrogations and wolves who look at me like I'm trash, and I'm still standing. Lila stood now, her expression furious. Your survival means nothing. Your struggles mean nothing. You are nobody, a packless wolf with delusions of grandeur who somehow seduced our king. Enough! Kale's voice cracked like a whip. He stood, power radiating off him in waves. You will not speak to her that way. We speak the truth. You speak prejudice disguised as tradition. His eyes blazed gold. Elara is here because I want her here. Because in 3 days she showed me more courage and honesty than most of you have shown in 10 years. Because when raiders attacked, she didn't hide. She fought. Because she challenges me to be better instead of just blindly following orders. He crossed to stand beside Elara, his presence like a shield. You want to question her worth? Fine. Let's talk about worth. How many of you would risk your life to save someone you barely know? How many would face down a room full of hostile wolves without backing down? How many would survive 3 years alone and still have the strength to hope for better? Silence. That's what I thought. Kale's voice was cold. You judge her for being packless like it's a moral failing instead of a tragedy. Like she chose to lose her family and her home. Like surviving on her own makes her weak instead of proving she's stronger than most pack wolves who'd fall apart without their structure. She doesn't belong here, Lyra said, but there was less conviction in her voice now. She belongs wherever I say she belongs. Kyle took Elara's hand, and I say she belongs at my side. If any of you have a problem with that, challenge me directly. But stop hiding behind questions and implications. Either accuse us openly or accept the situation. The council members exchanged glances. The scarred male looked uncertain. The thin female seemed thoughtful rather than hostile. Lyra stood alone in her fury. You're making a mistake, she said quietly. Elevating a packless wolf, breaking tradition. It will destabilize everything. Good, Kyle said. Maybe it's time for some instability. Maybe the old ways need to be challenged. And if this ends badly, if she betrays you, if this whole situation explodes in your face, then I'll deal with the consequences. But I won't sacrifice what matters for political convenience. Not anymore. He looked at Elara, something fierce and tender in his expression. She matters, and I'm done pretending otherwise. Elara's throat tightened. Her eyes burned with tears she refused to let fall. Lyra stared at them both, her expression calculating. Then she sat down slowly. Very well, the council acknowledges your attachment, but we require assurances. What kind of assurances? Kale asked warily. That Miss Vance is not a security threat, that she has no hidden allegiances or agendas. Lyris's smile was sharp. We propose a formal investigation, background checks, interviews with anyone who knew her before the dissolution, a thorough review of her movements over the past 3 years. Elara's stomach dropped. They were going to dig through her whole life, every embarrassing job, every failure, every desperate moment. No, Kyle said flatly. No? Lyris raised an eyebrow. You refuse to allow us to verify her legitimacy? I refuse to subject her to an invasive investigation based on nothing but your paranoia. His jaw was tight. She's told you the truth. If that's not enough, that's your problem. It's not paranoia to want to protect you. It's prejudice dressed up as concern. Kale's voice was hard. And I won't enable it. The scarred male cleared his throat. Perhaps a compromise. Miss Vance could demonstrate her capabilities. Prove she's worthy of standing beside you through action rather than interrogation. Elara spoke before she could stop herself. What kind of demonstration? He smiled, and it wasn't kind. The gathering includes traditional trials, combat, strategy, leadership challenges. If you're truly as strong as the Alpha King claims, you should have no trouble succeeding. It was another trap. She could see it clearly. Put her in trials designed for trained pack wolves, let her fail publicly, use that failure to prove she didn't belong. But refusing would prove the same thing. Fine, Elara said, her voice steady. I'll do it. Kale turned to her, alarm in his eyes. Elara, I'll prove I belong. She met the council's stares one by one. Give me your trials, your challenges, I'll face them. Lyris's smile was victorious. Excellent. We'll register you for the competitions beginning tomorrow. I look forward to seeing what a packless wolf can accomplish. The meeting ended shortly after, the council members filing out with various expressions of satisfaction and skepticism. Only Lyris lingered. You've made a powerful enemy, she told Elara quietly. I will find your weakness, and when I do, I'll use it to destroy you. You're welcome to try. Lyris's eyes narrowed. I don't try. I succeed. Then she swept out, leaving them alone. Kyle turned to Elara, his expression torn between admiration and fear. What did you just do? What I had to. Her legs felt weak, adrenaline draining away. They were never going to accept me based on words alone. I need to prove myself. The trials are brutal, designed for wolves who've trained their whole lives. You could get seriously hurt. I could also succeed. Elara, I'm not backing down. She gripped his arms. You stood up for me in there. You risked everything. The least I can do is fight for the right to stand beside you. Kale pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her. You're either incredibly brave or completely insane. Still probably both. She buried her face in his chest. What have I gotten myself into? A war. His voice was grim, but at least we're fighting it together. They stood like that for a long moment, holding each other in the empty council chamber. Then Kale pulled back. Come on. If you're really doing this, we need to prepare. I'll get you a trainer, someone who can teach you the basics before tomorrow. Tomorrow? The trials start tomorrow? Welcome to the gathering. His smile was wry. Nothing here is easy. They left the chamber and returned to the suite. Kyle made a series of phone calls while Elara tried to process what she'd just agreed to. Combat trials, strategy challenges, leadership tests. She was going to die. An hour later, there was a knock on the door. Kyle opened it to reveal a female wolf in her 30s, muscular and scarred, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. Your Majesty, she said, nodding to Kyle. Then to Elara. You must be the packless wolf who's causing all the chaos. That's me. Good. I like chaos. She extended her hand. I'm Morgan. The king asked me to train you for the trials. Elara shook her hand, Morgan's grip firm and strong. Can you really teach me enough in one night? Probably not, but I can teach you enough to survive. Morgan's smile was sharp, and sometimes survival is victory enough. Kyle squeezed Elara's shoulder. I have to attend the opening ceremony. It's required, but Morgan will take care of you. Go. Elara forced a smile. I'll be fine. He kissed her forehead. I'll be back as soon as I can. Then he was gone, and Elara was left alone with Morgan. The older wolf studied her critically. The king says you killed a raider. I got lucky. Luck is just preparation meeting opportunity. Show me what you've got. They spent the next 6 hours training. Morgan taught her basic combat stances, how to use her smaller size as an advantage, how to read an opponent's movements. She was a brutal but effective teacher, pulling no punches. By midnight, Elara was covered in bruises and so exhausted she could barely stand. That's enough, Morgan said finally. You're not going to win through technique. You don't have the training, but you're fast and you're stubborn, and that counts for something. Not enough to beat pack wolves who've trained their whole lives. Maybe not in a straight fight. Morgan handed her a water bottle. But trials aren't always about strength. Sometimes they're about strategy, about knowing when to push and when to conserve energy, about making your opponents underestimate you and then surprising them. How do I do that? By being exactly what they think you are, right up until you're not. Morgan's smile was sharp. They expect a packless wolf to be weak, scared, easy to break. So give them that. Let them think they've won, then hit them where they're not looking. Elara thought about that as she showered and collapsed into bed. Her whole body ached. Her mind was spinning with techniques and strategies and the terrifying reality of what tomorrow would bring. She was almost asleep when the door opened softly. Kale slipped in, still in his formal clothes, looking exhausted. He sat on the edge of the bed, his hand finding hers in the dark. "How was the ceremony?" she asked. "Political theater? Everyone pretending to be allies while planning how to stab each other in the back?" He squeezed her hand. "How was training?" "Brutal. Morgan's terrifying. She's also the best fighter I know. If anyone can prepare you, it's her." He was quiet for a moment. "You don't have to do this. We can still back out. Find another way." "There is no other way. They'll never accept me without proof." She shifted, making room for him on the bed. "Besides, I want to do this. Want to prove I'm more than what they think I am." Kale lay down beside her, pulling her close. "You're already more than they could possibly understand. Then tomorrow I'll make sure they see it." They fell asleep tangled together, the night before the trials stretching ahead like a held breath. Morning came too fast. Elara woke to sunlight streaming through the windows, and Kyle already gone, a note on the pillow saying he had to attend the opening of the trials but would find her after. Morgan arrived an hour later with clothes, practical fighting gear that fit perfectly, and a protein bar that tasted like cardboard. "Eat," Morgan ordered. "You'll need the energy." They made their way to the trial grounds, a massive arena complex where thousands of wolves had already gathered. The noise was overwhelming, cheering, shouting, the clash of metal on metal from the practice rings. Morgan guided her to the registration area, where a bored-looking official checked her name against a list. "Elara Vance, Packless, sponsored by—" The official's eyes widened. "Sponsored by the Alpha King himself." He looked at her with new interest. "You're that wolf, the one from the station." "That's me." He stamped her registration form. "You're in the first trial. Starts in 20 minutes. Combat Ring 3. He hesitated. "Good luck. You're going to need it." Morgan led her to the staging area near Ring 3. Other competitors were already there, all pack wolves, all looking confident and trained and utterly unimpressed by her presence. A massive male wolf with tribal tattoos sneered at her. "Look at this. They let packless trash compete now. What's next, house pets?" Elara ignored him, focusing on her breathing like Morgan had taught her. "I'm serious," the male continued. "Why are you even here? You going to cry when someone hits you? Run away?" "Fenris." Morgan's voice was sharp. "Leave her alone." "Why? She's nobody. Probably won't last 30 seconds. He turned to Elara. "Do yourself a favor, Packless. Forfeit now before you get hurt." Elara met his eyes. "No." "Your funeral." He laughed and turned away. Morgan leaned close. "That's Fenris Kane, Alpha's son from the Iron Ridge pack. He's won the combat trials 3 years running." "Great." Elara's stomach twisted. "Is he in my bracket?" "Probably. The first round is random pairings." Morgan gripped her shoulder. "Remember what I taught you. Use your speed. Don't try to match his strength." The announcement crackled over the loudspeakers. "First combat trial beginning. Competitors to your assigned rings." Elara walked to Ring 3 on shaking legs. The crowd pressed close, hundreds of wolves watching, judging. She climbed through the ropes into the fighting space, a simple circle marked in the dirt. No rules except stay inside the boundary. Her opponent stepped into the ring. Not Fenris. A female wolf, lean and fast-looking, with cold eyes and a predatory smile. "I'm Cassandra," she said. "Silver Creek Pack. And you're the packless nobody the king's supposedly in love with." Elara didn't respond, just took her stance like Morgan had taught her. Cassandra laughed. "This is going to be fun." The whistle blew. Cassandra moved like lightning, closing the distance in a heartbeat. Elara barely dodged the first strike, feeling the air move past her face. She ducked, spun, tried to create space. But Cassandra was faster, stronger, trained. A fist caught Elara in the ribs, driving the air from her lungs. She stumbled, catching herself just before falling. The crowd roared. "Come on, Packless," Cassandra taunted. "Is that all you've got?" Elara's wolf surged forward, angry and desperate. She let it rise, let the partial shift take her, claws extending, teeth sharpening, strength flooding her muscles. She caught Cassandra's next punch, twisted and threw the other wolf off balance. Not far, not enough to win, but enough to surprise her. Cassandra's eyes widened. "Oh, You've got some fight after all. They circled each other, both breathing hard. The crowd was screaming now, divided between support and derision. Elara saw Kyle at the edge of the ring, his expression fierce and worried. She thought about everything that had brought her here, the train, the raiders, the council. Kyle standing up for her. Lyris's cold certainty that she'd fail. She thought about 3 years of being invisible, and she decided she was done being invisible. Cassandra lunged. Elara didn't dodge. Instead, she stepped into the attack, taking a hit to her shoulder but getting inside Cassandra's guard. Her clawed hand found the other wolf's throat. Not crushing, just holding. Cassandra froze. "Yield," Elara growled. For a moment she thought Cassandra would keep fighting. Then the other wolf's eyes flicked to Elara's claws, to her own vulnerable position. "Yield," Cassandra said quietly. Elara released her and stepped back. The referee's whistle blew. Winner, Elara Vance. The crowd erupted, half cheering, half shouting in disbelief. Elara climbed out of the ring on shaking legs, her whole body screaming in pain from the hits she'd taken, but she was standing. She'd won. Morgan caught her, grinning fiercely. That's how you make a statement. Kyle was there a moment later, pulling her close despite the crowd watching. "You were incredible." "I got lucky." "No, you were smart, brave, perfect." He kissed her forehead. "And now everyone knows you're not someone to underestimate." Elara looked out at the crowd, at the wolves who'd dismissed her, mocked her, assumed she'd fail. They weren't dismissing her anymore. They were watching. And for the first time in 3 years, Elara Vance felt like she mattered, like she belonged, like she was finally, truly seen. The buzz started immediately. By the time Elara made it back to the preparation area, packless wolves she'd never met were staring at her with something that looked like hope. Pack wolves watched with wariness instead of contempt. Even the officials handled her registration for the next trial with a kind of grudging respect. Word spread fast in a gathering this size. A packless wolf had won her first combat trial, against a trained pack warrior, without backing down. Morgan handed her water and a towel. "You've got 2 hours before the strategy trial. Rest, eat, then we prepare." Elara collapsed onto a bench, every muscle screaming. Her ribs were bruised from Cassandra's hit, her shoulder throbbing, but underneath the pain was something else, something fierce and bright. She'd done it. She'd actually done it. Kyle sat beside her, his hand finding hers. Around them, wolves pretended not to stare while absolutely staring. "How are you feeling?" he asked quietly. "Like I got hit by a truck, but also like I could take on the world." His smile was soft, proud. "That's the adrenaline talking. It'll fade. Let me enjoy it while it lasts." She leaned against him, not caring who saw. "What's the strategy trial?" "Pack simulation. They give you a scenario, usually a crisis situation, and you have to propose solutions, leadership decisions under pressure." His expression darkened. "It's designed to expose weakness. Show who can think clearly when everything's falling apart." "Sounds fun." "It's brutal and subjective. The judges can fail you even if your solution would work, just by claiming it wouldn't." He squeezed her hand. "They'll be looking for any excuse to discredit you." "Then I won't give them one." Morgan returned with food, real food, not protein bars, and Elara forced herself to eat even though her stomach was twisted with nerves. Around them, competitors came and went, some victorious, some nursing injuries and pride. Fenris Kane walked past, his expression dark when he saw her. "Enjoy your win, Packless. Cassandra went easy on you." "She didn't," Morgan said flatly. "Elara won fair. We'll see how long that lasts." Fenris's smile was cruel. The real trials haven't even started yet. After he left, Morgan shook her head. "Ignore him. He's scared." "Of what?" "I'm nobody." "You're somebody who just proved packless wolves can compete. That threatens everything he believes about hierarchy and natural order." Morgan's expression was serious. "You're not fighting just for yourself anymore, Elara. Every packless wolf watching is hoping you succeed. And every pack wolf who benefits from the current system is hoping you fail." The weight of that settled over her like a shroud. 2 hours later, she walked into the strategy trial arena with her hands shaking and her mind racing. The setup was simple: 10 competitors sat at individual stations, each with a screen displaying the same scenario. Judges sat at an elevated platform, watching everything. The crowd filled the stands, thousands of wolves waiting to see who would crack under pressure. Elara took her assigned seat. To her left, a stern-looking male from the Northridge pack. To her right, a young female who kept shooting her nervous glances. The head judge, an ancient wolf with white hair and cold eyes, stood and addressed them. The scenario is as follows. You are the acting alpha of a border pack. A disease has broken out, killing wolves within days. Your healers can't identify it. Neighboring packs are threatening to quarantine you, cutting off trade and support. You have limited resources, growing panic, and dying pack members. What do? The screens lit up with additional details. Population numbers, resource inventories, maps showing neighboring territories. Elara's mind kicked into gear. She'd never led a pack, had no formal training in crisis management, but she'd survived 3 years alone, making impossible choices with limited resources. She understood desperation, understood what it meant to have no good options. She started writing. Around her, other competitors worked furiously. Some looked confident, others looked lost. 30 minutes later, the head judge called time. Each of you will now present your solution. We'll begin with... His eyes scanned the room and landed on her with obvious intention. Elara Vance. Of course they'd make her go first. Give her no chance to learn from others' presentations. Elara stood, her notes clutched in her hand, and walked to the presentation platform. The crowd was silent, waiting to see her fail. She took a breath and began. The immediate priority is information. We can't fight what we don't understand, so I'd send samples to every healer in allied territories. Not just our neighbors, everyone. Cast the widest possible net. She pulled up the map on the display screen. Simultaneously, I'd implement strict quarantine protocols. Not to isolate the sick from the healthy within our pack, but to prevent spread while we figure out what we're dealing with. She could see skepticism on the judges' faces, but pushed forward. The neighboring packs threatening quarantine are scared. Understandable. So instead of fighting them, I'd offer transparency. Daily updates on infection rates, mortality, symptoms. Invite their healers to observe from a safe distance. Make them partners in solving this instead of enemies hiding behind borders. That shows weakness, one judge interrupted, admitting you can't handle the crisis alone. It shows pragmatism. Pride doesn't cure disease. Elara met his eyes. I'd rather look weak and save lives than look strong and watch my pack die. The judge's expression flickered, surprise maybe, or grudging respect. She continued, for resources, I'd appeal directly to the Alpha King. This isn't just a border pack problem. If this disease spreads, it threatens the entire territory. Frame it as a territorial security issue, not a request for charity. That gets you emergency support without looking desperate. And the panic? Another judge asked. How do you handle pack members who are terrified? Honesty. I'd hold daily gatherings, tell them exactly what we know, what we don't know, and what we're doing about it. People can handle hard truths better than comfortable lies. The panic comes from uncertainty. You reduce uncertainty by communicating clearly. She outlined the rest of her plan: rotation schedules for healers to prevent burnout, mental health support for families of the sick, contingencies if the disease couldn't be stopped. When she finished, the silence was deafening. Then the head judge spoke. Your solution relies heavily on cooperation from other packs and the Alpha King. What if they refuse to help? Then I'd make them understand it's in their interest to help. A disease this virulent doesn't respect borders. Today it's my pack. Tomorrow, it could be theirs. She paused. Fear is a powerful motivator. I'd use it. Ruthless, another judge observed. Realistic. Elara held his gaze. Sometimes the right choice isn't the noble one. It's the one that works. She returned to her seat, her heart hammering. She had no idea if what she'd said was good or terrible. No frame of reference for how pack leaders actually thought. But she'd been honest, and that had to count for something. The other competitors presented their solutions, most focused on internal control, strict hierarchies, iron-fisted leadership, shutting down panic through dominance. A few echoed her ideas about cooperation, but tentatively, like they weren't sure. When the last presentation finished, The judges deliberated for what felt like hours. Finally, the head judge stood. The winners of the strategy trial, in order of ranking, first place, Elara Vance. The crowd erupted, some cheering, some shouting in disbelief, some simply stunned into silence. Elara sat frozen, unable to process what she'd just heard. First place. She'd won. The judge continued reading names, but she couldn't hear them over the roaring in her ears. Morgan was beside her suddenly, gripping her shoulder and grinning fiercely. Other competitors shot her looks ranging from respect to fury. And across the arena, Kael stood watching with an expression that made her chest ache. Pride. Wonder. Something deeper that she didn't have words for. She'd done it. Against every odd, every expectation, every wolf who'd assumed she'd fail. She'd proven she belonged. But the trials weren't over yet. The final challenge was announced the next morning. A leadership trial. Different from the strategy session. This one was public, visceral, designed to test not just intelligence, but character. Each remaining competitor would be given a real situation, a dispute between wolves, a conflict that needed resolution, and had to handle it in front of the entire gathering. No preparation, no second chances. Elara stood in the staging area with 5 other finalists. Fenris was there, looking murderous. So was a calm female alpha from the Western Territories and 3 other pack wolves she didn't know. The head judge explained the format. You'll each be called forward to mediate an actual dispute. These are real wolves with real conflicts. How you handle them will determine your final ranking. Fenris went first. His dispute was a territory disagreement between 2 neighboring packs. He handled it with brute authority, basically telling both sides to shut up and accept his decision. It was efficient but left both parties looking resentful. The Western Alpha got a mating conflict, 2 wolves claiming the same partner. She navigated it with diplomacy and grace, finding a solution that honored everyone's feelings. Then it was Elara's turn. She walked to the center of the arena, her stomach in knots, and faced the 2 wolves waiting there. One was a young male, maybe 20, with desperate eyes. The other was an older female, hard-faced and angry. The judge explained. These wolves are from the same pack. The male's sister was killed by rogues 2 months ago. He wants revenge, wants the pack to hunt down and execute the rogues. The female is the pack's head enforcer. She says they don't have the resources for a revenge mission, and it would put the whole pack at risk. The judge looked at Elara. Resolve this. It was a trap. No matter what she chose, someone would be devastated. Elara turned to the young male first. What was your sister's name? He blinked, caught off guard. Sarah Chen. Tell me about her. His voice broke. She was good, kind. She didn't deserve to die like that. No one deserves to die like that. Elara's throat was tight, memories of her own parents' deaths rising up. I lost my parents to rogues when I was 15. I wanted revenge too. Wanted to hunt them down and make them suffer. The male's eyes widened. Did you? No. Because my pack needed me here, not dead on some revenge mission. She paused. And because killing them wouldn't bring my parents back, wouldn't heal the hole they left. It would just make more holes. So I'm supposed to just forget? Let them get away with it? I didn't say that. She turned to the enforcer. You say you don't have resources for a revenge mission. What about a targeted strike? Small team, specific intelligence, surgical approach instead of all-out war? The enforcer frowned. That's possible, but still risky. Everything's risky. The question is whether the risk is worth it. Elara looked between them. Sarah deserves justice, but justice doesn't mean suicide. It means being smart about how you get it. She outlined a plan. Small team, reconnaissance first, only engage if they had clear advantage and exit strategy. Give the brother a role so he felt heard, but keep it controlled enough that the pack wasn't endangered. It's not perfect, she admitted, and it might not work. But it honors Sarah's memory without destroying everyone who loved her. That's the best I can offer. The brother was crying now, but he nodded. Okay, we try it your way. The enforcer looked thoughtful. I can work with that. The judge called time, and Elara returned to her spot, shaking. She just proposed a revenge mission, encouraged violence. Everything in her screamed that it was wrong, but it was also real. It acknowledged the brothers' pain while protecting the pack. It wasn't clean or noble. It was human. The remaining competitors handled their disputes with varying success. When the last one finished, the judges deliberated again. Elara stood with Morgan, barely breathing. "You did good," Morgan said quietly. "I told them to hunt rogues." "You told them to be smart about grief. That's different." Morgan squeezed her shoulder. "Sometimes the right answer isn't the peaceful one. It's the honest one." The head judge stood, and the entire arena fell silent. The leadership trial has concluded. After reviewing all performances across all 3 trials, we have our final rankings. He read through the lower positions first. The Western Alpha placed 3rd. Fenris placed 2nd, his expression furious. And in 1st place, demonstrating exceptional strategy, compassion, and practical leadership, Elara Vance. The crowd's reaction was deafening. Half were cheering wildly. The other half were shouting in protest, claiming the trials were rigged, that a packless wolf couldn't possibly have won fairly. Elara stood frozen, unable to believe it. She'd won. All 3 trials, 1st place overall. A packless wolf had just beaten every trained pack competitor in the gathering. The implications crashed over her like a wave. Kyle was there suddenly, pulling her close despite the crowd, despite the cameras, despite everything. "You did it," he said into her hair. "You actually did it. I didn't think—" "I knew. I knew you could." He pulled back to look at her, his eyes fierce. "Now they all know too." The awards ceremony was held that evening in the Grand Hall. Thousands of wolves gathered to watch as the trial winners received their honors. Elara stood on the stage in the same green dress she'd worn to the council meeting, Kyle beside her in his formal blacks. The other winners stood at intervals, but all eyes were on her. The head judge presented her award, a medallion marking her achievement, and the crowd's reaction was split exactly down the middle. Thunderous applause from packless wolves and progressive pack members. Stony silence from traditionalists. Lyris watched from the front row, her expression unreadable. After the ceremony, there was a formal reception. Elara moved through it in a daze, shaking hands, accepting congratulations and thinly veiled insults with equal grace. A young packless wolf approached her, maybe 18, with tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "You proved we're not nothing, that we can be more." Elara's throat closed. "You were always more. I just made them see it." More packless wolves came forward throughout the night. Some just wanted to touch her hand. Others told her their stories, years of discrimination, of being treated as less than, of struggling to survive in a system designed to exclude them. By the end of the reception, Elara felt the weight of it all pressing down. She'd become a symbol without meaning to, a voice for wolves who'd been silent too long. It was terrifying and humbling and more responsibility than she'd ever imagined carrying. Kyle found her on a balcony later, staring out at the gathering grounds. Below, thousands of wolves celebrated or plotted or simply tried to make sense of everything that had changed. "You're thinking too hard," he said, joining her at the railing. "I'm thinking about what happens now. I won the trials, proved I can compete, but that doesn't solve anything. The council still hates me. Half the territory thinks I'm a fraud, and now I'm somehow responsible for every packless wolf's hope." "You're not responsible for their hope. You're just the first one brave enough to show them it's possible." He turned her to face him. "But you're right that the council won't stop. Lyris is already working on her next move." "What move?" "She's calling for a formal challenge, wants the council to review the trial results, claim bias because of our relationship." His jaw was tight. "She's trying to invalidate your win," anger flared in Elara's chest. "Of course she is. Can't have a packless wolf actually succeeding. Might upset the natural order. We can fight it. Present evidence that the trials were fair. Get testimony from the judges." "No." Elara's voice was firm. "I'm done playing defense. Done proving myself over and over while they keep moving the goalposts." "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we stop reacting and start acting." She met his eyes. "You're the Alpha King. You have the power to change things, to rewrite the rules that keep packless wolves marginalized. It's not that simple." "Yes, it is. It's exactly that simple. You're just scared of the fallout." She softened her tone. "And I get it. Change is terrifying, but staying the same is worse. Kael was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the gathering. If I start making systematic changes, I'll have a revolution on my hands. The pack alphas will resist. The council will fight me at every turn. It could destabilize the entire territory. Or it could make it stronger. Give a voice to wolves who've been silenced. Create a system based on merit instead of birth. She took his hands. You told me I was brave for standing up to the council. Now I'm telling you to be brave too. Stop maintaining a system you know is broken just because it's comfortable for the wolves in power. You're asking me to risk everything. I'm asking you to do what's right, even when it's hard, especially when it's hard. She paused. And I'm asking you to trust that the wolves who matter, the ones who actually care about justice and fairness, will stand with you. He pulled her close, resting his forehead against hers. You make it sound so simple. It's not simple. It's just necessary. They stood like that for a long moment, the night air cool around them, the sounds of the gathering distant. Finally, Kael pulled back. If I do this, if I really commit to changing things, there's no going back. It'll define my reign. Make enemies of wolves I need as allies. Then make new allies. Build a different power base, one that includes the wolves you've been ignoring. A slow smile spread across his face. You've been thinking about this. I've had a lot of time to think. 3 years of being invisible gives you perspective. What would you change? Specifically? Elara had been waiting for this question. Start by removing the legal distinction between pack and packless wolves. Make resources available to everyone, not just those born into the right families. Create opportunities for packless wolves to prove themselves, like these trials, but ongoing. And most importantly, give us representation. Put packless wolves on the council, in positions of authority. Make it impossible to ignore us anymore. Kael whistled low. That's ambitious. That's fair. There's a difference. He studied her, something shifting in his expression. You know what this means, don't you? If I elevate packless wolves, if I put you on the council, they'll never stop coming after us, never stop trying to tear us down. I know. And you're okay with that? I'm okay with fighting for something that matters. She held his gaze. Are you? Instead of answering, he kissed her, deep and fierce and full of promises and certainty. When they broke apart, his eyes were determined. We're going to change everything, aren't we? Yeah, we are. The next morning, Kael called an emergency council meeting. Elara stood beside him as they entered the chamber, and this time she wasn't nervous. She was ready. Lyris looked surprised to see them. Alpha King, this meeting wasn't scheduled. I'm calling it now. Kael's voice carried absolute authority. We have matters to discuss. The council members assembled quickly, their expressions ranging from curious to hostile. Kael didn't wait for them to settle. I'm proposing systemic reforms to how we handle packless wolves in this territory. The chamber erupted. Wolves shouting, demanding explanation, protesting before they even knew what he meant. Kael let them yell for a moment. Then his power flared, subtle but unmistakable. The room went silent. The current system is broken, he continued calmly. We have thousands of capable wolves being marginalized based solely on pack status. That's not just unjust, it's wasteful. We're throwing away potential because of outdated traditions. Traditions exist for a reason, Lyris said coldly. Pack structure creates stability, order. Remove that and you have chaos. We have chaos now. We just call it hierarchy. Kael's gaze swept the council. I'm proposing we remove the legal distinction between pack and packless wolves, create equal access to resources and opportunities, and establish formal representation for packless wolves in territory governance. That's insane, the scarred male sputtered. You can't just, I can. And I am. Kael's tone was flat. You can support these reforms or oppose them, but they're happening either way. You'd split the territory over this? Lyris stood, her expression furious. You'd risk civil war to elevate packless trash? Elara stepped forward before Kael could respond. Packless trash won your trials. Beat every pack wolf who competed. Demonstrated leadership and strategy that half your pack alphas couldn't match. Her voice was steady. So either your trials are meaningless or your assumptions about packless wolves are wrong. Which is it? Lyris's eyes narrowed. One exceptional case doesn't... I'm not exceptional. I'm just the first one you couldn't ignore. Elara looked around the chamber. There are thousands more like me. Wolves with potential and intelligence and strength who've been shut out because they don't have the right last name or the right connections. You've built a system that wastes talent and calls it tradition. And what would you have us do? The thin female asked. Open the floodgates? Let anyone claim authority? Create pathways for earning authority. Merit-based systems. Opportunities to prove worth regardless of birth. Elara's hands were steady now, her voice calm. The trials proved it's possible. Now make it permanent. Murmurs rippled through the council. Not all hostile, some thoughtful. The scarred male leaned back in his chair. Even if we agreed, which I'm not saying we do, implementation would be a nightmare. Restructuring laws, reassigning resources, dealing with pack alphas who will resist. Then we deal with it. Kale's voice was firm. Start small, pilot programs. Prove the concept works, then expand. He paused. And to demonstrate my commitment to this, I'm appointing Elara to the council as the official representative for packless wolves in this territory. The chamber exploded again. This time, Kyle let them yell. Lyris's voice cut through the chaos. You cannot appoint her. Council positions are elected by regional packs. Council positions are appointed by the Alpha King with pack approval, Kale corrected. Check your bylaws. I have the authority, and I'm using it. The packs will never approve. Then we'll put it to a vote, territory-wide. Every wolf gets a say, pack or packless. Kale's smile was sharp. Unless you're afraid of what the actual wolves in this territory want, instead of what the council assumes they want. Lyris's face went white with rage, but she had no counter. A territory-wide vote was legal, and refusing one would make her look like she feared democracy. Fine, she said through gritted teeth. We'll vote. And when it fails, you'll accept that your little revolution has no support. Agreed. Kyle extended his hand. Lyris didn't shake it, just turned and swept from the chamber, several council members following. But others stayed. The scarred male, the thin female, a few others who looked thoughtful rather than hostile. You're serious about this, the scarred male said finally, about actually changing things. Completely serious. It'll be messy, complicated. Half the territory will fight you. I know. The scarred male smiled, slow and genuine. Good. About time someone shook things up around here. He stood and offered his hand. You have my support, for what it's worth. Others followed, not all of them, but enough. Enough to build on. The vote was scheduled for the final day of the gathering. 1 week to campaign, to argue, to convince wolves across the territory that change was necessary. Elara threw herself into it. She spoke at assemblies, met with packless wolves who'd never had a voice, listened to their stories and their fears and their hopes. She debated pack alphas who opposed the reforms, holding her ground even when they tried to intimidate her. Kale was everywhere, meeting with regional leaders, negotiating compromises, building coalitions. He was brilliant at it, turning opposition into cautious support, finding common ground where none seemed to exist. They worked separately but moved together, two pieces of the same strategy. 3 days before the vote, Elara was leaving a gathering of packless wolves when someone grabbed her arm and yanked her into an alley. Fenris. His eyes were wild, his wolf too close to the surface. You've ruined everything. Elara tried to pull away, but his grip was iron. Let go of me. You're destroying the natural order, making wolves think they can rise above their station. It's chaos. It's justice. It's a lie. He slammed her against the wall, his forearm across her throat. You're nobody. A packless bitch who got lucky and now thinks she can rewrite how the world works. But you can't. You'll fail, and when you do, everything will go back to normal. Elara couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. Her wolf surged up, desperate and furious. Then Fenris was gone, ripped away and thrown across the alley like he weighed nothing. Kale stood over him, his eyes pure gold, his wolf fully present. Touch her again, and I'll kill you. Fenris scrambled backward, terror replacing rage. I was just threatening my mate. Kale's voice was deadly quiet. Assaulting a council member, attempting to undermine a territory-wide vote through violence. He took a step forward. Choose which charge I prosecute you for, or leave now and never come near her again. Fenris ran. Cale turned to Elara, his expression shifting instantly from fury to concern. Are you hurt? I'm fine. But her hands were shaking. He's terrified. They all are. Of what we represent. Good. Fear means we're actually changing things. He pulled her close. But fear also makes people dangerous. We need to be more careful. I don't want to be careful. I want to win. We will win, but not if you're dead. He tilted her face up. Promise me you'll take security seriously. No more walking alone. No more taking chances. Kyle, promise me. She saw the fear beneath his anger, the very real terror of losing her. I promise. They increased security after that. Guards followed Elara everywhere. It was suffocating but necessary. The attacks didn't stop. Verbal assaults, threats slipped under doors, anonymous messages promising violence if the reforms passed. But support grew too. Packless wolves rallied. Progressive pack members joined them. Even some traditionalists admitted the current system needed adjustment. The night before the vote, Elara stood in front of a mirror in the royal suite staring at her reflection. She barely recognized herself. The scared waitress from Thornmere was gone, replaced by someone harder, stronger. Someone who'd faced down council interrogations and won trials and survived assassination attempts. Someone who mattered. Kyle came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. What are you thinking? That I'm terrified we're going to lose tomorrow. That all of this will have been for nothing. It won't have been for nothing. Even if we lose the vote, we've started a conversation, planted seeds, changed minds. He rested his chin on her shoulder. But we're not going to lose. How do you know? Because hope is contagious. And you've given thousands of wolves hope they didn't have before. He turned her to face him. Win or lose tomorrow, you've already changed everything. She kissed him, pouring 3 weeks of fear and hope and desperate love into it. I love you, she said against his mouth. I should have said it before. Should have been brave enough. You're the bravest person I know. His gray eyes were soft. And I love you too. More than I thought I could love anything. They spent the night wrapped together, drawing strength from each other, preparing for whatever tomorrow would bring. The voting took place in the main arena, every wolf in the territory casting their vote electronically. The results would be announced at sunset. Elara spent the day in the royal suite, unable to eat, unable to think about anything except the numbers climbing on screens across the territory. Kyle paced, equally unable to settle. It's going to be close, he said for the 10th time. I know. If we lose, we'll try again. We'll keep trying until it works. He stopped pacing and looked at her. You really believe that? I have to. The alternative is giving up, and I'm done giving up. As sunset approached, they made their way to the announcement platform. Thousands of wolves gathered below, the crowd split visibly between supporters and opponents. The head judge took the podium, holding a tablet with the results. The vote on systemic reforms for packless wolf integration has concluded, he announced. Total votes cast, 47,329. For the reforms, 24,103. Against the reforms, 23,226. The crowd erupted, cheering, shouting, chaos. Elara stood frozen, unable to process the numbers. They'd won. By less than 900 votes, but they'd won. The judge continued reading details, but Elara couldn't hear over the roaring in her ears. Kale pulled her close, and she could feel him shaking too, relief and triumph and disbelief all mixed together. They'd actually done it, changed the law, rewritten the order. The celebration lasted all night. Packless wolves crying and hugging strangers, progressive pack members joining the revelry. Even some of the opposition grudgingly accepting the results. Lyris was nowhere to be seen. Elara moved through it in a daze, accepting congratulations, making speeches she barely remembered, her hand clasped tight in Kyle's. It wasn't until late that night, back in the quiet of the royal suite, that it really hit her. She'd gone from invisible to influential in less than a month, from nobody to council member, from packless and forgotten to the voice of thousands. It should have felt triumphant. Instead, It felt heavy, real, permanent. What happens now? She asked Kyle, staring out at the gathering grounds where celebrations still raged. Now we do the hard part, implementation. Making the reforms actually work. He joined her at the window. Building a new system while the old one fights back. It'll take years, decades maybe. I'm not going anywhere. Neither am I. He pulled her close. We started this together. We'll finish it together. Elara leaned into him, watching the future unfold below. She thought about the train, about boarding the wrong car and finding the right person, about 3 days that had changed everything, about a packless wolf and an alpha king who'd chosen each other when the world said they shouldn't, about love and courage and the revolutionary act of refusing to stay invisible. We're going to change the world, she said quietly. We already have. Kale kissed her temple. Everything else is just details. Below, a group of packless wolves started singing, an old song about freedom and hope and better days coming. Others joined in, the sound rising into the night sky. And standing in the royal suite, wrapped in each other's arms, Elara Vance, former waitress, current council member, future architect of a new world, smiled. She'd been seen, she'd been heard, she'd mattered. And that, more than any title or position or power, was the real victory. The gathering would end tomorrow. Wolves would return to their territories, carrying news of the reforms with them. Some would resist. Others would embrace the change. But it had started. The revolution had begun. And nothing would ever be the same. Kale turned her to face him, his gray eyes serious. Ready for what comes next? Elara thought about it. About the battles ahead. The opposition they'd face. The hard work of turning votes into reality. About the packless wolves counting on her, the future she'd promised to build. About the impossible love that had started on a train and grown into something that could reshape a kingdom. Yeah, she said, meaning it with everything she had. I'm ready. And she was. They both were. Together they'd stepped into the light. Now they'd use it to illuminate the darkness for everyone who'd been left behind. The story wasn't over. It was just beginning.